Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to Audiobook Dynasty. If you want early access and even more parts for free, make sure to join me on Patreon. Just as Rosinante had predicted, after that letter arrived at Marine headquarters, the entire base went on high alert. The uncertainty surrounding the Grey Kingdom pirates and their ability to traverse space had made everyone wary. They didn't know how the enemy might attack, so they had to prepare for anything, especially a sudden ambush. But one day passed. Then two. Then three. Still, Rosinante made no move. The eerie silence stretched on, and the tension began to fray nerves. More and more hot-tempered Marine officers started cursing out loud. What the hell was going on? They received a blatant declaration of war, and then nothing? They felt like they were being toyed with. After all, maintaining full alert status wasn't just lip service. It required massive manpower and resources. Even vice admirals had to be on constant standby. On the third day, when some began to believe Rosinante's letter had been a prank and started to let their guard down, it happened. Several bombs suddenly appeared out of nowhere and exploded within Marine headquarters, throwing the supposedly ironclad base into utter chaos. The entire facility erupted in panic. But when the smoke cleared, they realized it was just a few bombs. Only a few dormitories were damaged. Steelbone Kong's face turned dark as storm clouds. He hadn't expected things to spiral like this. Despite the heightened security, the mere appearance of a few bombs had turned Marine headquarters into a circus of chaos. But what enraged him even more was this: no one had died. The bombs didn't even directly injure anyone. Most injuries came from Marines panicking and trampling over one another. Some even mistakenly opened fire and wounded their own allies. This is what we call the elite of Marine headquarters. Steelbone Kong growled. This is our so-called well-trained force? A few little bombs and you all lose your minds? At this rate, we won't even need the enemy to destroy us, we'll self-destruct just fine. How are you people training your troops? Fleet Admiral, it's not entirely the soldiers' fault, a Vice Admiral offered cautiously. They've been on edge for days under full alert. The sudden explosions simply overwhelmed their nerves. Oh? So issuing the alert was a mistake? Kong's voice turned icy. No, sir, that's not what I meant, the Vice Admiral said quickly. I just think, we're being too passive here. We can't stay in full alert mode forever. If the enemy never attacks, are we supposed to just sit around wasting manpower and doing nothing? Marine headquarters should always maintain a certain level of readiness, Sengoku interjected calmly. Even without the threat of the Grey Kingdom, we must stay vigilant for security's sake. But Vice Admiral isn't wrong, remaining in full alert indefinitely renders us ineffective. What's your suggestion then, Sengoku? Kong asked. Let the regular troops stand down from full alert. Replace it with base-level readiness. Meanwhile, deploy elite forces in covered positions, Sengoku proposed. This way, we'll appear relaxed on the surface but remain tight within. If the Grey Nation strikes, we'll be ready. More importantly, we must urge the world government to locate their base. No one can defend forever. Sooner or later, we have to hunt the thief rather than guard the treasure. Sengoku was famous for his tactical brilliance. With just one glance, he grasped the situation and proposed the most practical response. I think that'll work. Agreed. It's a good balance. Other officers began nodding in approval. Steelbone Kong gave a satisfied nod. I'll coordinate with the world government. You handle the reorganization. Yes, sir. Sengoku replied. After the meeting, Sengoku invited Garp and Tsuru into his office. This is getting complicated, Sengoku sighed, rubbing his temples. What's so complicated about it? Garp asked with a grin. If Rosinante shows up, I'll punch him back to the Stone Age. It's not that simple, Tsuru said grimly. We're already on the defensive. Don't worry, little Tsuru. If that brat Rosinante dares show his face, I'll make sure he regrets it. Garp cracked his knuckles confidently. He wasn't boasting. As one of the world's top powerhouses, even someone like Binz, with his space warping ability, wouldn't dare try anything funny around Garp. In fact, if the Grey Kingdom did try to sneak up on Garp, the whole situation might be easier to solve. But would they really be that foolish? As long as Binz remains at large, we'll always be reactive, Tsuru said coldly. I'm not even worried about a frontal assault on Marine HQ. We've got enough firepower here to counter them. What worries me is that Rosinante may just be using this as a diversion. What if his real goal is assassinating world government officials? Or even world leaders or the celestial dragons? That would be disastrous, Tsuru added. The problem is we don't even know where the Grey Kingdom is hiding, Sengoku said with frustration. He had already sent word to marine branches around the world to look out for Rosinante or any trace of the Grey Kingdom. But so far nothing. Not a whisper. Now it's all up to the world government's intelligence network, Tsuru said. I wouldn't hold my breath, Sengoku replied. They've been trying to track Rosinante for 2 years now, even before the O'Hara incident. He was a ghost then, and now? Still a ghost. Trying to locate him in a short time is, nearly impossible. You mean the world government's intel has never turned up a single clue about him in 2 whole years? Garp asked, frowning. That's right, Sengoku confirmed. After that stunt with the letter, I went to CP's archives to check Rosinante's files. The last 2 years are completely blank. At most, there were sightings of possible affiliates, but those individuals vanished without a trace. Even CP couldn't dig up a lead. Garp murmured, lost in thought. With the world government's resources, someone like Rosinante should leave a trail. Especially with a whole crew under him. They can't all just disappear. It doesn't add up, Tsuru said sharply. To stay hidden from the world government for that long. Garp muttered. There's only one guy I know who could do that. You're thinking of the Golden Lion, Sengoku said, startled. Indeed, just recently, the infamous Golden Lion had escaped from the deep-sea prison, Impel Down. He had vanished completely, despite the world government's full efforts. The only confirmed sighting was a brief meeting with Whitebeard before he disappeared again. You think Rosinante is doing the same thing? Sengoku asked. Same method, different people, Garp replied. We all know where Golden Lion's hiding. He's up in the sky. But knowing that doesn't help if we can't find where in the sky. There's one other possibility, Tsuru said slowly. Her voice carried a chilling edge. They're on a sky island. Rosinante may have the ability to silence gravity, but to raise an entire island so high into the sky that it disappears from sight and keep it floating there for 2 whole years? 2 years ago, I don't think he was capable of that, Tsuru said seriously. Even if he did manage it, even if he could make it self-sufficient up there in the sky, do you really think his crew would willingly stay holed up on some godforsaken floating island for that long? Unless, they had things to do up there. As senior officers of the Navy, they were well aware of the existence of sky islands. The cultures of sky islands and the Blue Sea were vastly different, and due to the altitude over 10,000 meters above sea level, the world government found it incredibly difficult to send troops there. The air pressure alone made it unbearable for Blue Sea dwellers, and even if elite fighters were sent, they'd be severely limited. In short, sky islands were like rogue outposts to the world government, too inconvenient to control but too valuable to ignore. Eventually, they just gave up trying. Ironically, many of the people living on sky islands were descendants of soldiers originally sent to conquer them. It's very possible, Sengoku muttered as he stood up. Rosinante does have flight capabilities. He could have easily transported his men to a sky island. And if that's the case, then we've got a real problem on our hands, he said, his expression darkening. After 2 years of development up there, who knows what he's built? When I first heard the name of his pirate crew, the Grey Kingdom, I scoffed. What kind of pirate crew calls itself a kingdom, a nation? But now, the more I think about it, the more terrifying it becomes. He might have really established a nation up there, something massive. Ha ha ha. These young people today, always doing the unexpected, Garp chuckled. He wants to be a king now, huh? Got a taste for it. Garp couldn't help thinking of his own son who had abandoned his position in the Navy to form the Revolutionary Army and try to overthrow the world government. These damn kids really didn't know how to give their elders a break. I'll report this to the Fleet Admiral immediately, Sengoku said. We have to pinpoint Rosinante's exact location. And even if you do find it, how do you plan to launch an assault? Tsuru asked. Sky Islands were over 10,000 meters above the sea. Sure, there were ways to reach them, but transporting a whole army up there? Nearly impossible. Logistics, resupply, movement, everything would be a nightmare. If we find where he is, I'll go up myself and show him what the Navy is made of. Garp declared confidently. That might not be a bad idea, Sengoku nodded. We could form a small elite unit. Strike teams. Take out key officers, decapitate the leadership. Once their core is gone, the Grey Dominion will collapse. It's a decent plan, but it's also extremely risky, Tsuru warned. That place might already be Rosinante's turf. To launch a solo mission into enemy territory like that, you're practically walking into a trap. Even if it's dangerous, we can't just sit here and get played. First, let's gather intel on the island. Once we know what we're dealing with, we can strategize properly, Sengoku said firmly. Tsuru finally nodded in agreement. She couldn't deny his point. Later, after receiving Sengoku's report, Kong immediately contacted the 5 elders. Their response? A single sentence, understood. Then they hung up. Kong was left fuming. Meanwhile, all this bizarre Navy activity had drawn the attention of pirates in the New World. The Navy's actions over the past few days were just too strange. First, the Marine headquarters went into full alert mode, causing many New World pirates to assume the Navy was preparing for some massive operation. Old man, I figured it out, Marco said. Remember how the Navy's buster call was destroyed by that guy Rosinante, the one they're calling the usurper? Well, he sent a letter to the fleet admiral, accusing the Navy and world government of slandering his name and ruining his reputation. He promised to deliver a grand gift in return. That letter alone sent the entire Navy into emergency meetings and full-scale alert. All that over one letter, the 3rd Division commander asked, incredulous. Kahaha, that wasn't just a letter, Whitebeard said with a hearty laugh. That was a declaration of war. This Rosinante, interesting guy. And the fact that he could cause this much commotion in Marineford? That tells me he has something the Navy truly fears. You're right, Pops, Marco nodded. Rosinante's right-hand man is someone named Binz, a Void Knight. He's got the power of the warp fruit, which lets him open spatial portals. He placed the war letter right on the fleet admiral's desk, and not a single person saw how he did it. Apparently, he can teleport troops or snipe targets from a distance too. That's why the Navy freaked out. So, have they started fighting yet? There's been no news, asked Vista, the 5th Division commander. That's the strange part, Marco replied. After delivering the letter, Rosinante made no moves for 3 days. The Navy stayed on high alert the entire time. Then, just as they were beginning to relax, Binz dropped a few bombs on Marineford, blew up a few dorms and caused complete chaos. No one was seriously hurt, but the panic was real. Kahaha. Kahahaha. Brilliant. So that old goat Kong got punked by Rosinante, hey? Whitebeard roared with laughter. Pretty much. Marco grinned. Pops, if you're this entertained, why not take him in as one of your sons once he reaches the new world? His pirate crew is called the Grey Kingdom, and get this, their vice captain is none other than Katakuri of the Big Mom Pirates. No idea how he managed that. Charlotte Katakuri. Big Mom's second son. Kahahaha. That crazy old woman's going to go ballistic. And indeed, Big Mom had already lost it. A terrifying wave of conquerors' haki surged out from the Cake Castle, shaking the island to its core. Countless homies fainted from fear, and civilians on whole Cake Island dropped like flies from the overwhelming pressure. How dare he! How dare he! Katakuri, how could you? Big Mom screamed, absolutely livid. Please calm down, Mama. I'm sure Katakuri must have had his reasons. Charlotte Bruley pleaded. That's right, Mama. Big brother Katakuri would never betray you. Charlotte Oven added quickly. Yes, Mama, please don't be angry, said Charlotte Deifuku, also trying to calm her down. Even if he had a reason, does that justify betrayal? Big Mom snapped. Go find this so-called Grey Kingdom, burn them to the ground. Bring Katakuri back to me. I want to hear from his own mouth why he turned his back on me. Yes, Mama, the Big Mom pirates chorused. No one dared disobey her will. And frankly, this was a matter that demanded resolution. Katakuri had to come back and explain himself, no matter the cost. As for this Grey Kingdom, they were nothing to the Big Mom pirates. They didn't even know where the Grey Kingdom was located or what kind of force they were facing. But that didn't stop Big Mom's fleet from mobilizing for war. While the Marines and the Big Mom pirates were scouring the seas in search of Rosinante and his crew, a fleet of massive pirate warships slowly approached the outskirts of Birka Island. But surprisingly, the residents of Birka Island weren't afraid. Because flying on the masts of those warships were the familiar black and grey dragon flags, symbols of their suzerain nation, the Grey Kingdom. Initially, the people of Birka resisted becoming a vassal state. No one wanted to be under the thumb of pirates, no matter how powerful they were. But as the Grey Kingdom waged wars across various seas, conquering and plundering, they brought back endless resources. Annual tribute gatherings between the vassal states became large-scale festivals of trade and cultural exchange. With each passing year, Birka seemed to rocket forward in development as if it had boarded a high-speed train. What was once a modest island now thrived with trade, infrastructure, and order. Gradually, the people's view of their overlords changed from resistance, to respect, to full-fledged loyalty to the Grey Kingdom. Their pirate flag was as unique as the nation itself, a black and grey background, emblazoned with a golden wyvern. Clutched beneath its claws was a crimson-eyed, blood-soaked skull, a symbol of domination and dread. Each division of the Grey Kingdom had its own distinctive battle flag in addition to the main flag. For instance, the 1st Division's corner bore an embroidered mammoth head, while the 2nd Division flaunted an explosion motif. Every division stitched its own insignia onto the golden wyvern banner, showcasing its individuality and strength. What's going on? Why are all 5 divisions back at once? Yeah, last time this happened was for the annual tribute summit, but we're months away from that, one sharp-eyed Birka local observed. Something big must have happened. Usually, when the divisions return, it's just their flagship with a handful of guards. But look at this, every single ship is packed. Looks like they've mobilized their entire forces. As rumors swirled, the fearsome pirates disembarked from their warships. Their bloodlust and murderous aura sent chills down the spines of onlookers. The mere sight of the 1st Division's warriors grinning with violent excitement caused several civilians to faint on the spot. Atop the clouded heights of Birka Island stood a not-so-grand yet elegant villa. Rosinante didn't care much for palaces, he preferred comfort and quiet. Using the unique shell technology of the Sky Islands, he had built a modernized sanctuary. In the living room of the villa, Rosinante was seated at a table, calmly practicing calligraphy with a brush. Ever since he had begun learning Tai Chi, he had grown fond of brushwork. Its flowing grace echoed the essence of martial harmony. By the window sat another man, silent and unmoved by the hustle of the arriving pirates. This was none other than Charlotte Katakuri, the very person Big Mom was desperately hunting down. The room began to fill as the division commanders entered one by one. None of them dared disturb Rosinante. Just then, 3 women in matching maid outfits walked in, pushing a cart of afternoon tea. At the front was Shaxia, the maid commander of Rosinante's elite combat maid corps. Behind her were Nico Robin, also dressed in a maid outfit, and a young Shandian girl named Reiki. Although the so-called combat maid corps had long been a one-woman unit, Shaxia had recently set her sights on Reiki. The girl, with promising combat potential and adorable charm, had been recruited as the 2nd member. As for Robin, she had been living with Rosinante as his younger sister figure. She wasn't meant to be a maid. But when she saw the maid outfit Rosinante had designed, curiosity got the better of her. She tried it on, found it cute, and simply decided to keep wearing it. After pouring tea for the guests, the 3 maids quietly exited. The division leaders took sips from their teacups as Rosinante finally put down his brush. A moment later, an oppressive yet awe-inspiring aura descended on the room. The sheer dominance of it wasn't just any ordinary pressure, it was the aura of a king. This aura! There's no mistaking it. Admiral-level presence, the commanders murmured in disbelief. Jack was visibly stunned. I didn't expect you to be the first to break into Admiral tier. The aura vanished as quickly as it came. Rosinante walked forward and sat in the central seat of the room. These past 2 years, all of you got rich beyond your wildest dreams. Fat lords rolling in treasure. Rosinante sneered, half smiling. If I hadn't announced an attack on Marineford, you all would have kept hiding your numbers and hoarding soldiers. Now look at you, all your cards on the table. Captain, our 1st Division never lied in our reports, said Sol, grinning. Last check-in, we had 3,363 men. Still the same. Bull. You ran into Kaido last time, that's the only reason you're not 10,000 strong by now. Barth barked. If you hadn't taken heavy losses, you'd be bursting at the seams. And you 3rd Division guys are no better. You've got more men than we ever had during our peak. You hiding half your city's worth of soldiers, another commander asked, squinting. Not too many, Burz said proudly. Just 7,116. But the real fat cat is our dear 2nd Division captain. Over 10,000 men and a bottomless treasury? I should have joined the assault on Angel Island. Burz said with a mock sigh. Captain, we never meant to hide anything from you, said Railman, nervous now. It's just we've been expanding fast. You were off handling other matters, so we didn't report everything in time. Now we've got 13,000 men, most from Angel Island and Shandia. They begged to join us. We couldn't hold them back even if we tried. Rosinante's expression darkened. All vice captains, listen up, he barked. Get to bins right now. File full reports on your forces' headcounts, compositions, everything. Everyone must be registered. Create life cards for all of them. From now on, no one joins the Grey Dominion unless they're registered with HQ, understood? Yes, sir. All the vice-captains sprang to their feet and rushed out to carry out the order. Captain, are we really going to attack Marineford? Burz asked. What, you scared? Rosinante raised an eyebrow. Captain, if you order it, I'll march into the holy land of Mary Gosa itself. Burz declared fiercely. You might be an idiot, but I'm not, Rosinante rolled his eyes. Attack the Red Line? That's suicide. In this world where strength reigns supreme, the world government had stood unshaken for over 800 years. Corrupt or not, their foundations were unimaginably deep. Surviving endless tides of rebellion and chaos wasn't luck, it was raw power. God knows what monsters lurk within the Red Line. Attacking that place would be insanity. Truth is, Rosinante said, voice low, we are attacking Marineford. And not just any attack. We're going to hit them so hard they'll never forget it. If any of you are afraid, now's the time to leave. A real war at last, Jack's eyes lit up with excitement. I've waited so long. Your Majesty, everything is ready. The blood-sworn Royal Guard and all the division units are in position. Binns reported to Rosinante. Then let's begin, Rosinante said calmly. Yes, sir. Binns saluted and left swiftly. The first to move was the blood-sworn Royal Guard. Now numbering over 500 elite warriors, this unit was forged from the best of the best within the Grey Kingdom. Many of them had been handpicked from various divisions for their outstanding combat prowess, each at least at the level of a Marine Major. Equipped with specialized shell-based weapons, subjected to the harshest military training, and empowered by Rosinante's own healing seals, this force was destined to be one of the most formidable on the seas. Each member of the blood-sworn Royal Guard was armed with a rank shell sniper rifle, a weapon capable of long-range assassination and, when equipped with linked ammo, functioned as a machine gun. Its destructive power even surpassed that of modern heavy-caliber Gatling guns. Strapped to their waists were a shock shell handgun and a combat saber, standard issue gear for the blood-sworn. At this moment, they had their sniper rifles pointed at small mirrors placed before them. Binns had prepared extensively for this moment. In fact, the Navy had misunderstood everything. The one who had infiltrated Marineford and left the letter wasn't Binns. It was Rosinante himself. Though Binns could open space wormholes over long distances, he needed a stable spatial anchor to do so. And he had no such coordinates within Marineford. That meant he couldn't directly open a wormhole to Marine HQ. So, Rosinante had personally flown to Marineford. There, he released the natural restrictions on his body, entering a profound state of emptiness, a condition of total silence and invisibility. With this perfect stealth, he infiltrated the heavily guarded headquarters and placed the letter directly on Fleet Admiral Kong's desk. At his current strength, Rosinante had already stepped into Admiral-class territory. Once he activated this void state, his devil fruit abilities would surge dramatically. His entire body would become undetectable, not even a whisper of breath or trace of life remained. Even in Marineford, teeming with high-level experts like Sengoku, Carve, and Kong himself, none sensed his presence. While they were aware of Rosinante's impressive stealth capabilities, none of them believed he could stroll undetected into the heart of Marineford, let alone the Fleet Admiral's office, the inner sanctum of military secrecy. Once the Navy learned of Binns' existence and his spatial powers, they naturally assumed that he was the only one capable of such a feat. This misconception further deepened their fear of Binns' wormhole ability. And after the Battle of O'Hara, Akainu and the others assumed that Rosinante had been seriously injured and would need time to recover. No one expected him to take action so soon. But during his infiltration, Rosinante had also discreetly planted several special stones infused with Binns' spatial signature. These acted as anchors for Binns to open long-distance portals directly into Marineford. This is what led to the infamous bomb attacks that destroyed several dormitories within the Navy's headquarters. After the Marines lifted their state of full alert, Binns resumed opening small wormholes throughout the base, setting up spatial coordinates all over Marineford to prepare for what came next. When Rosinante said he was giving the Navy a grand gift, he wasn't just being dramatic. Originally, his plan had been to assassinate a few vice-admirals. But as the world government continued to twist the facts of the O'Hara incident, vilifying him more and more in the eyes of the world, Rosinante realized that wouldn't be enough. He still had to return to the Blue Sea one day. And his Grey Kingdom followed a suzerain vassal model. If his name became too infamous, it would severely undermine his future authority and expansion. So, he decided on a bold new course of action, make a statement so powerful that the world government would think twice before defaming him again. Of course, the most effective move would be to assassinate a few celestial dragons. That would silence the government immediately. But that would also mean crossing the ultimate line, declaring all-out war on the celestial dragons themselves. If he chose that path, he would have to be prepared for a brutal, never-ending blood feud with the ruling powers of the world. Rosinante knew he wasn't ready for that level of confrontation, not yet. So, he chose a different target, the Navy. If he could make the Navy feel pain, if he could display a fraction of his true strength, the world government would start to tread more carefully. That was Rosinante's real goal. He also knew that the moment after delivering the letter would be the Navy's most vigilant period. Attacking at that time might yield results, but the risk would be astronomical. Though Binns could snipe from long range using his wormholes, Marineford was still crawling with elite officers. Rosinante wanted to minimize casualties on his side. That's why he waited until now, when the base's full alert had been downgraded to standard patrol protocols. Still, all the key areas remained under surveillance. Elite officers were watching from the shadows. Secret patrols were being conducted under strict orders. Colonel Kinder was one such officer. He had been with the Navy for over a decade. Among headquarters colonels, his strength was average, neither elite nor weak. His current mission was to secretly patrol the base under the Navy's relaxed on the surface, tight within strategy. Truthfully, Kinder didn't understand why the High Command was so wary of a single pirate crew. Even if they were powerful, this was Marineford. The fortress of justice. The mightiest naval base on the seas. Backed by the full power of the world government. Even the Whitebeard pirates wouldn't make them tremble like this. Still, an order was an order. The Navy had trained him to obey without question, especially commands coming from the Fleet Admiral himself, and executed by an admiral like Sengoku. As Kinder scanned his surroundings warily, he failed to notice the tiny black vortex that had appeared just behind his head. Pfft! A faint gunshot echoed through the corridor. A high-speed bullet pierced through Kinder's skull before he could even register the sound. In his final moments, his mind was filled with disbelief. He had been vigilant. He had scanned every direction. So how had a bullet reached him from behind? Why hadn't he seen it coming? Then it struck him. His superior had warned him the enemy could open space wormholes and snipe through them. He had been told this. He remembered. But after so many days of peace, he had gradually lowered his guard. And the price of that mistake was death. At the same time, across various parts of Marineford, the same faint pft of silenced gunfire echoed. Marine officers tasked with security fell into pools of blood. Even major-level officers were among the dead. These were battle-hardened warriors equivalent to vice-admirals at branch bases. But they too died in stunned disbelief. In the Navy, only foot soldiers relied on guns. Once someone reached a certain level of strength, firearms became little more than decoration. Why? Because in this world, guns were weak. Anyone with decent skill could dodge a bullet, and even if hit, a strong enough body could shrug off the damage unless it struck a vital point. Of course, there were legendary firearms crafted by master gunsmiths that could kill even the strongest warriors, but such weapons were rare and astronomically expensive. So in this world, guns were seen as second-rate weapons relegated to background props. Only top-tier snipers wielding these rare guns posed any real threat. And yet, it was those very guns they had always looked down on that ended their lives. Your Majesty, Bin's voice echoed from a wormhole that opened before Rosinante. The guards around Marineford's primary weapons depot have all been eliminated. Notify the 1st Division, Rosinante said with a chilling calm. Commence the operation. Yes, sir, Bin's replied. On board the 1st Division's main battleship, the newly constructed New Mammoth, a portal opened, and a figure stepped through. The original Mammoth, the flagship of the 1st Division, had been destroyed in the battle against Kaido. This new vessel had been built afterward, crafted by shipwrights from Sky Island. In addition to the traditional seafaring sails of the Blue Sea, this massive warship was powered by the exclusive dials of Sky Island, allowing it to sail even without wind or directly against it. It boasted many other unique Sky Island features as well. For instance, mounted along its sides were large-scale flaming dials, capable of unleashing devastating bursts of flame. However, today, those weapons wouldn't see any action, at least, not yet. Now, aboard the New Mammoth, every member of the 1st Division stood ready for battle. Their faces were marked by a feral bloodlust, a chilling hunger for war. After their cataclysmic clash with Kaido, Jack's original 1st Division had nearly been wiped out. Of the 5,000 warriors, only a few hundred had survived, and even they were all wounded. But these survivors were the elite of the elite. To survive a battle against Kaido was proof enough of their monstrous endurance and strength. In the months that followed, Jack and Soul reorganized the 1st Division with these veterans as its core. They then recruited new soldiers from across their territories. In just half a year, the 1st Division had once again grown to a force of around 3,000. And with the veterans leading them, even though their numbers had shrunk, their combat power wasn't the least bit inferior to the former force. From the shimmering space tunnel stepped none other than Binz. Captain Jack, Binz reported, all security around the pillbox vault has been cleared. His Majesty has given the order, the 1st Division is authorized to commence action. Your mission sees the largest weapons depot of Marine headquarters. As he spoke, Binz handed over a mission directive, bearing Rosinante's personal signature. Now that the Grey Kingdom had its own military structure, each division operated under its own captain, with vice-captains managing discipline and training. Rosinante normally didn't interfere in their internal affairs. He only assumed command when the divisions fought in concert. And when issuing concrete combat orders, he always signed them personally, a command no one in the Grey Kingdom could defy. The directive embodied Rosinante's absolute authority. Any disobedience, unless from a captain or vice-captain, could be met with immediate judgment by the blood-sworn guards. Even division leaders and their vice-captains weren't immune. If the situation warranted it, the blood-sworn guards could detain them, leaving final judgment to Rosinante. Jack took the directive but didn't even bother to glance at it. Instead, he handed it to Soul behind him. Finally, a real battle, Jack grinned savagely. And against Marine headquarters, no less. I've been itching for this. Alright, boys, let's go crash their little party at Marine HQ. Yeah, the warriors of the 1st Division roared in unison. Open the wormhole, Jack ordered. Understood. Binz replied. He pressed his hand against a tall mirror that the 1st Division had long prepared in advance. The mirror shimmered, turning transparent and hollow. The portal is open. Maintain communication. If danger arises, we'll deploy immediate support and begin extraction procedures, Binz said. Talk to Soul about all that. Don't bother me with logistics, I just wanna enjoy the fight, Jack said, already striding into the wormhole. Soul gave Binz a helpless shrug. You'd better coordinate with me. Once Captain Jack starts fighting, he forgets everything else. Got it, Binz nodded. Once you're through, let me know. I'll close the portal on this end to prevent enemies from sneaking onto Sky Island through it. Understood, Sol replied. Then I'll report back to His Majesty. Contact me if anything changes, Binz said with a nod. Give His Majesty my regards, Sol responded. Binz nodded once more, then stepped into another wormhole and disappeared. Kill every last one of them. Jack's voice rang out. His Majesty's orders are to take the weapons depot. But my orders to you raise hell after we take it. We don't get many chances to storm Marine HQ. Let's make it count. Kill. The 1st Division let out thunderous cheers as they charged toward the armory. Who goes there? The Rear Admiral of Marine Headquarters, responsible for guarding the ammunition depot, was stunned by the sudden assault. He rallied the stationed Marines and rushed out. Get lost! Jack roared. With a single swipe of his massive hand, he grabbed the Rear Admiral by the face. Effortlessly lifting the man, Jack slammed his head hard into the ground. After 2 years of warfare and training on Sky Island, especially his battle with Kaido, Jack's power had soared. He now stood at the level of a top-tier Vice Admiral. That Rear Admiral never stood a chance. Charge! Seeing their captain crush a Marine officer in a single move, the soldiers of the 1st Division let out a bloodthirsty roar and surged toward the armory. Within moments, chaos erupted as Marines and 1st Division soldiers clashed in a brutal melee. Typically, a captain would command and coordinate the battlefield. But in the 1st Division, Jack only cared about fighting, leaving the actual command to his vice-captain, Sol. Your Majesty, the 1st Division has launched its assault. Their attacking target won the largest weapons depot at Marine Headquarters. But Binz's image appeared from a portal as he spoke. Your coffee, Your Majesty, said Shaxia in a maid's uniform as she gently placed a cup beside Rosinante. What about it? Rosinante asked, sipping his coffee. Well, Captain Jack doesn't seem to care much for your specific orders. He's more interested in wreaking havoc at Marine HQ. Could this affect our broader plan? No need to worry about him, Rosinante replied calmly. Those captains and vice-captains have always been a rebellious bunch. They're used to their freedom. As long as they accomplish the missions I give them, there's no need to micromanage. Too much restriction would only backfire. That's why I gave you all the authority to execute any soldier below the rank of captain or vice-captain. But Your Majesty, Shaxia asked, aren't you afraid that giving them such total freedom could lead to rebellion? Rebellion? Rosinante chuckled. Not with silent wounds monitoring them from the shadows. Besides, I've already given them more freedom than anyone else ever would. All I ask in return is that they complete their missions. If, after all that, they still rebel, then it only means they think I'm not strong enough. And if that day comes, I'll personally show them why I rule this kingdom the hard way. Rosinante had never been the type to handle petty administration. His experience in the kingdom of Jormia had taught him how overwhelming even a small nation's governance could be. If he had to deal with the paperwork of a full empire or massive pirate organization day in and day out, he'd rather just die. He didn't build this empire to get buried in bureaucracy. He wanted to live freely, without restraint. So he adopted a laissez-faire approach with his divisions. Thankfully, the nation he built was a pirate kingdom. Each vassal state had its own system. He didn't need to intervene in their internal affairs. All the Grey Kingdom had to do was collect annual tribute, maintain sovereignty over its territories, and protect its allies from outside threats. The tasks of defense and recruitment were left to the Blood-Sworn Guard and the various divisions. Rosinante only needed to preside over the yearly tribute ceremony. Aside from that, he could do as he pleased. In a world ruled by strength, the best part was if you were strong enough, no one beneath you dared rebel. Since the 1st Division has begun, Rosinante said, setting down his cup, let the other divisions begin as well. Yes, Your Majesty, Binz answered, and immediately set things in motion. The Marine Headquarters A1 Armory was the largest weapons depot in all of Marineford, guarded by a force of several thousand Marines under the command of a Rear Admiral. Ever since Admiral Sengoku implemented the loose outside, tight inside policy, he had secretly deployed numerous elite officers around the armory in plain clothes to keep a covert watch. But the moment the battle erupted, every single one of those hidden officers had already been intercepted and taken down by the blood-sworn guards. As for the Rear Admiral leading the defense, he had been flattened by a single palm strike from Jack. With only the ordinary soldiers guarding the armory left, they were completely outmatched by the 1st Division, especially with a powerhouse like Jack present, whose strength now rivaled the top vice admirals. Just as the 1st Division was about to break through into the armory, a lone figure suddenly burst out from the ranks of the Marines, brandishing a long blade that stopped Jack in his tracks. The moment that man appeared, Jack grew wary. He clenched his fist, imbued it with armament haki, and punched forward. The blade clashed with his fist in a loud ring of force, neither side giving way. Who are you? There's no way someone like you is a nobody in the Marines. Jack narrowed his eyes, his instincts screaming caution. As expected of the Admiral's foresight. I am Vice Admiral Dalmatian of Marine Headquarters. Surrender now, said the man in Marine garb, revealing his true identity. Vice Admiral Dalmatian. It's Vice Admiral Dalmatian, the Marines shouted in excitement, rallying behind the familiar name. Humph, looks like Binz and the others weren't thorough enough in clearing out the pests. Who would have thought a big rat like you would be hiding among the insects? Still, this just got more interesting. If all I had to deal with were these weaklings, it'd be a real letdown, Jack grinned. A rat is a natural counter to a mammoth. Jack the Mammoth, you're not taking another step forward today, Dalmatian declared. Because of Rosinante's elaborate schemes and psychological games, many Marine officers had begun to lower their guard, thinking Rosinante was all bark and no bite. That he wouldn't really dare attack Marineford. Some even mocked their more cautious peers, saying they were bringing shame to the Marine name. How could the mighty Marine headquarters tremble just because of one ridiculous challenge? But even if others became complacent, Sengoku, renowned as a strategic genius, never relaxed his vigilance. In fact, his instincts told him to be even more alert. Not because he fully understood Rosinante, but because the sheer precision and layered tactics in Rosinante's movements told Sengoku one thing: this wasn't a bluff. If everything that had happened was truly part of Rosinante's grand design, then many of the Marine forces had already fallen into his trap. And if the plan succeeded, especially with Binz's space warping abilities, Marineford would suffer a massive, possibly irreversible, loss. So, even as he enacted a facade of lax defense, Sengoku discreetly placed trusted vice admirals in disguise throughout the base, stationed exactly where it counted most. You think you alone can stop me? Jack roared, unleashing another brutal punch. Dalmatian met it with a fierce sword strike. Fist and blade collided again. Armament haki crackled at the point of impact, ringing through the air like steel on steel. Dalmatian felt a terrifying force travel up his sword arm. He had to shift his stance to deflect some of the power, then swiftly followed with another slash toward Jack. Jack's towering frame was an easy target. Dalmatian's blade slashed deep into his side, carving out a long gash. Damn, that hurts, Jack growled, not even bothering to dodge or defend. He stared down Dalmatian with a cold, mocking sneer, as if the wound was nothing. And then right before their eyes the long, bloody gash on Jack's body began to close on its own, healing slowly but surely. So that's it, just as I feared. What a troublesome ability. Not even awakened Zoan users have regenerative power this overwhelming, Dalmatian said, his eyes narrowing. From the battle at the Jormia Kingdom, the Marines had collected detailed reports on Rosinante and his subordinates. Among the many troubling revelations aside from their suicidal silent limit technique was their freakish healing ability. No matter how severe the injury, Rosinante's forces would heal rapidly, almost unnaturally so. And it wasn't just one or two people, nearly every top officer under Rosinante displayed this resilience. Eventually, Marine intelligence analysts reached a conclusion: the injuries were not healing per se. They were being silenced, locked away by Rosinante's power. The theory was that Rosinante's ability, wound silence, didn't erase injuries, but sealed them. That eerie healing was, in fact, the result of the wounds being suppressed by this power. It sounded outlandish, but it was the only theory that fit the evidence. It seems your Marines have learned quite a bit about us, Jack said with a cold smirk. The intel we've gathered goes far beyond your imagination, Dalmatian replied. Rosinante's wound silence can mute the pain and damage from any injury, essentially turning people into nearly immortal monsters. But anyone marked by this ability also falls under Rosinante's control. Because those silenced wounds aren't gone, they're just sealed. And Rosinante can unseal them at any moment. If he does, all those locked injuries erupt at once, and the victim dies instantly. When the Marines first uncovered this, they were both stunned and deeply alarmed. If Rosinante truly wielded such a power, then he could build an army of undead soldiers, a terrifying prospect. Relentless investigation by the Marines and the world government eventually unearthed more spies. To think, the infamous Mammoth Jack reduced to a slave under Rosinante's threat. What a joke! Dalmatian sneered. As he laughed, Jack's expression darkened, his face twisted like a volcano on the brink of eruption. Captain Jack, don't let him get to you. Sol called out, clearly worried. The other members of the 1st Division shared his concern, their eyes on Jack. You think I only follow the captain because wound silence holds my life hostage? Jack asked in a low, thunderous tone. Maybe that was true, at first. But now? It's become a mark of pride in the Grey Kingdom. Only the blood-sworn guards, the captains and vice-captains of each division, and those who've earned great merit can receive the mark. Use it to threaten us? The captain doesn't need to stoop that low. This mark now exists for one reason: to let us fight without holding back. That's all I care about, Jack said coldly, his voice like grinding stone. Every year during the vassal tribute, all divisions returned to the capital. Rosinante would then personally summon the captains and vice-captains not for training, but to treat them. He would unseal their injuries, nurse them back to health, and reapply wound silence to protect them. With Rosinante's current strength, he no longer needed to use this ability as a leash. Now, it was simply a tool to keep his warriors alive. What are you waiting for? You want to die? Jack suddenly barked at Sol and the others. Finish the captain's mission now. Damn it, Jack! You nearly gave me a heart attack. Sol snapped. Then he turned to the rest of the division. Alright, listen up. You've got 10 minutes. If that depot isn't ours by then, your training regiment's getting doubled. Kill, the soldiers roared in terror. They'd all gone pale. The first division surged forward like a tidal wave. Marines and pirates clashed again with a fresh burst of fury. The Marines quickly noticed something was off. The first division was fighting even more ferociously than before, like they'd been injected with pure adrenaline. Blades flashed, fists flew, and blood sprayed through the air. It was madness. And the Marines understood why training in the first division was already a nightmare. If it got even worse, they'd rather die on the battlefield than face that. No matter how grand your words sound, you're still just a bunch of cowards clinging to life. Today, I'll put that so-called wound silence to the test. Let's see if you can still heal when I cut you into dust, Dalmatian sneered. Try it, if you think you're capable, Jack replied coldly. As he spoke, he drew his twin, oddly shaped scythe blades. Shave. Dalmatian vanished with a burst of speed, reappearing with his long blade flashing toward Jack. Clang! The Vice-Admiral's sword collided with Jack's scythe, and the resounding impact thundered through the air. What monstrous brute strength! Dalmatian staggered a step back as an overwhelming force surged up his arm. Before he could recover, Jack's second blade was already swinging at him. He swiftly used Shave again, dodging aside and repositioning to launch another flurry of strikes. The two clashed fiercely, neither gaining the upper hand. Dalmatian was a top-tier swordsman, his swordplay honed to the level of a grandmaster. Coupled with his mastery of Rokushiki, his movements were blindingly fast. He weaved circles around Jack, slashing relentlessly from all directions. But Jack was no weakling either. Their battle quickly fell into a deadlock. It became clear to Dalmatian that this wouldn't be a quick fight. This surprised him. Originally, he'd assumed that even if Jack possessed the wound silence ability, a vice-admiral of his caliber should still be able to subdue him. After all, strength wasn't always about killing. Dalmatian's goal was to capture Jack, not destroy him. That's why Admiral Sengoku had specifically authorized him to carry a pair of prototype C prism stone handcuffs developed by Marine R&D. But after only a short exchange, Dalmatian realized Jack's power far exceeded the intelligence gathered by the Marines. According to their data, Jack's strength placed him on par with a branch-level vice-admiral. His defenses and raw power made him a brute, but not someone a true Marine headquarters officer should struggle with. And yet now, here he was, evenly matched with Dalmatian, a top-tier vice-admiral. There was a massive difference between an average vice-admiral and a top-tier one. Normally, the latter could dispatch the former with ease. Jack had always been a capable fighter, but over the past years, he'd been forged in fire, relentless wars, savage conquest, and especially that earth-shaking battle with Kaido. All of it had pushed his strength to new heights. He now stood shoulder to shoulder with the elite. Once upon a time, Dalmatian could have beaten Jack. Now, they were equals. Looks like you're not all that after all, Jack grunted, growing bored with trading blows. He dropped his guard completely and lunged with reckless abandon. Dalmatian was forced to backpedal as Jack launched a flurry of mad, suicidal attacks. Your operation's exposed. This is Marine headquarters. Even if you had 10 lives, you wouldn't escape this place, Dalmatian shouted, refusing to break away as he kept Jack occupied. Then come take my life if you can. Jack bellowed, his assault growing even wilder. From the moment the 1st Division had begun its attack, the Marines guarding the armory had immediately issued a distress call. What? The A1 armory is under attack? And the hidden units we stationed there, all lost contact? What about Dalmatian? Wasn't he stationed there too? Sengoku snapped, his face dark with fury. The enemy commander is the pirate Jack the Mammoth. Vice-Admiral Dalmatian is already engaged with him, but it seems the opponent is extremely powerful. Vice-Admiral Dalmatian hasn't been able to bring him down. They're still in heavy combat, reported the aide grimly. The armory's emergency call wouldn't have come directly to Sengoku's desk under normal circumstances, but upon learning of the incident, his aide had immediately checked the statuses of nearby officers. To his horror, all the covert security officers around the armory had gone silent. That was when he realized the situation was critical and rushed to report it. So it's begun. Deploy reinforcements to the A1 armory now. That facility must not fall into enemy hands. Also, notify Kuzan. Tell him to move immediately. I want Marineford on full combat alert level 1 war readiness. Sengoku commanded. Yes, sir, the aide saluted and dashed off to carry out the orders. The A1 Armory was the largest weapons depot in Marineford. If it fell, the Marines would be at a severe disadvantage. Kuzan Aokiji was the best man for the job. His ice abilities gave him a unique edge. If the worst happened and the enemy tried to blow the armory up, Kuzan could freeze the entire complex to prevent catastrophic losses. Sengoku had already begun preparing for the worst. He knew the Grey Kingdom wasn't here just for one armory. Their ambitions ran far deeper. Marineford had many critical points: the Fleet Admiral's office, the Marine Treasury, the archives, the warship docks, the engine room powering the Gate of Justice. None of those places could be allowed to fall. And this wasn't even the only armory on base. Each of these facilities required protection. If the Grey Kingdom struck them all simultaneously, the Marines would suffer irreparable damage. Just covering these locations would demand a massive redistribution of Marine forces. That was the terrifying part about Binz's spatial abilities. He could deploy troops anywhere, instantly, making it impossible to predict where the next attack might come. One slip up and the enemy could punch a hole straight through the heart of Marineford. Sengoku dispatched Kuzan with one goal: end the battle at the A1 Armory quickly, and prepare for whatever nightmare came next. While Sengoku moved his pieces, far away, a shimmering portal opened aboard the 2nd Division's warship. Ha! Looks like Binz is here. Time for us to get moving, said the division captain, Railman, flashing a confident grin. Aboard the 2nd Division's ship, the soldiers stood in formation, fully armed and ready for battle. Even though Binz had already seen their numbers on paper, the reality left him stunned. Over 13,000 soldiers. Nearly double the size of most other divisions. And shockingly, a large portion of them were Shandian warriors. No wonder His Majesty put the main offensive in your hands. I didn't realize your division had grown this much. The numbers were just digits on a report, but seeing it in person it's downright terrifying, Binz said, visibly shaken. That's right. Of all the divisions, we've got the most manpower now. Giving us the main assault was the right call, Railman laughed. The Shandians were all natural-born warriors. Angel Island, which they had taken as their base, was one of the largest floating islands in the sky, with a population several times greater than Skypie's Birka. When the 2nd Division first conquered Angel Island, recruitment was slow. Most of the locals were hesitant to join a pirate army. But things changed fast. Every time a division conquered a new sky island, they gained a massive share of the war spoils. After the capture of Angel Island, just the gold from Shandora alone was enough to make the 2nd Division rich beyond imagination even after sending a huge portion as tribute. That gold, worthless as dirt on Sky Island, could be traded in the Blue Sea for unimaginable wealth. Every time the division set out for battle, a portion of the loot went to the soldiers. The braver the fighter, the greater the reward. When people saw the troops returning from the 2nd Division's campaigns richer than they could have become in a lifetime, it sparked a wave. More and more recruits poured in. They didn't care about glory. They wanted what every pirate wanted: riches, power, and a place in the new world the Grey Kingdom was building. Then let's begin. Your mission is to break in through the main gate and pin down the Navy's main force. If the Navy sends out its elite combatants, our blood-sworn guards will assist you in battle, said Binz solemnly. His Majesty made it clear, your mission is the most difficult of all. You'll be taking on the bulk of the Navy's forces. If any of you are afraid, there's still time to back out. Retreating now is no shame. But once you step onto the battlefield without His Majesty's order, there is no such thing as retreat. Bin's voice was sharp and commanding. Rest assured, without His Majesty's order, I won't take a step back. My 2nd unit has no cowards, bellowed Railman with a fierce grin. You can also rest assured, Binz added, when the time comes, His Majesty and the Vice-Captain will personally step in to hold back the Navy's top fighters. Well then, what's there to be afraid of? As long as you can keep the admirals and higher occupied, even if the Navy sends 10 times our numbers, they won't scare us 2nd unit folks, Railman said, raising his weapon high. Good. Then let's begin. Binz nodded, the order given. Back at Navy HQ, the comm of the command tower was shattered as a Marine burst through the doors in panic. Admiral. It's bad. A large force of pirates is charging in through the front gate. What arrogance! They're attacking head-on through the main gate. Sengoku shot to his feet, completely caught off guard. At that very moment, Railman stepped out from a spatial rift at the Navy's front gate, his eyes locking onto the towering central building of Navy headquarters. A cold smile curled on his lips as he raised his hand in the shape of a gun and mimed pulling the trigger. Charge! Kill! The warriors of the 2nd unit surged forward like a tidal wave, howling as they stormed toward the heart of Marineford. Sengoku had envisioned countless possible ways Rosinante might launch his attack. Yet never had he expected they would brazenly charge in through the front door. That gate was the very face of Navy headquarters. Even after deploying troops across various posts in anticipation of an assault, the front gate still had the majority of the Navy's forces stationed there. It should have been the last place anyone would attack. And yet the Grey Kingdom had chosen to strike there. There was only one explanation: they were outrageously confident in their strength. With their spatial transportation abilities, the Grey Kingdom could have chosen any number of ways to infiltrate. But they chose to fight head-on. That could only mean one thing: they truly believed they could overpower the Navy in open combat. Such brazen arrogance! Sengoku's face twisted with fury. To him, this was a direct insult, a declaration that the Navy was nothing to fear. He stormed out onto the high platform of Navy HQ and looked out over the sea of pirates charging through the main gate. Since the Navy had not been fully prepared, they were being pushed back rapidly by the onslaught of the Grey Kingdom troops. Unforgivable, they've gone too far. Behind Sengoku stood Fleet Admiral Kong and the gathered Vice Admirals stationed at HQ, all with faces like thunderclouds. Fleet Admiral Kong, Admiral Sengoku. The pirates have broken through the first line of defense, a sweating officer reported. What? How could they break through so quickly? What the hell are you all doing? Kong roared. They have snipers, the officer stammered, they're targeting our commanding officers. Every time we try to organize a defense or counterattack, the snipers take out our lieutenants and captains. Their rifles are devastating perfect accuracy against anyone below major rank. Even majors and above are being pinned down. Without leadership, our formations collapse. The soldiers are falling back in chaos. Kong's expression darkened even further. These are the elite soldiers of Navy HQ? Running from pirates like scared dogs, he growled through gritted teeth. Beside him, Sengoku's face was now deadly serious. What made Navy HQ soldiers stronger than regular troops wasn't just power, it was discipline and structure. Lieutenants led platoons, captains led companies. These low and mid-ranking officers were the backbone of the Navy's command and coordination in battle. If they were taken out, the whole army would be like a snake with its head cut off, no direction, just panic. A devastating tactic, Sengoku thought, eyes flashing with insight. And it was not something the Navy could easily replicate. First, pirates usually fought in disorganized mobs, killing a few lieutenants wouldn't break their lines. Second, even if the Navy wanted to try it, they didn't have nearly enough precision sniper rifles with this kind of power. They were being systematically targeted. This is a decapitation strike, Sengoku said grimly. We've been blindsided by an elite army trained for war. These are not your average pirates. We can't treat them as such. Hearing that, Fleet Admiral Kong's rage finally simmered into grim focus. Reform the defense lines immediately. We cannot let them storm through our front gate like this. Raise the inner defense wall. Regroup the retreating forces and hold the line. Sengoku barked. Defense wall, a captain asked in confusion, but they're already inside the outer wall. That's the outer ring, Sengoku snapped. It's meant to stop assaults from the sea. There's still an inner defensive wall in front of the central tower. The inner wall? Right. The captain blinked, he'd barely heard mention of it before. No wonder. That inner wall had never been raised before since its installation. But even if we raise it now, the first line is already lost. Plenty of pirates must have slipped past into the inner zone, a vice admiral noted. Exactly why we need to raise it now, Sengoku said. To cut off their front and rear, divide their forces. It's the only way to disrupt their assault. And notify the artillery crews. Tell them to fire at will. Bombard their front lines with everything we've got, buy us the time to raise the inner wall. Kong shouted. Understood, an officer saluted and ran off to deliver the orders. With the command given, the mighty cannons of Navy headquarters thundered to life. Explosions rocked the battlefield as shells rained down on the advancing second unit like a torrential downpour. At the same time, the inner defense wall in front of the central tower began to rise. What's going on? A wall? They're raising another wall. They're trying to block our advance. The front-line fighters of the second unit stared in frustration at the towering barrier. But before panic could set in, a warrior of the Shandia, armed with a heavy flamethrower, stepped forward. Clear the way, he bellowed. Without hesitation, the nearby fighters scattered to the sides, giving him room. He leveled the flamethrower at the rising defense wall and pulled the trigger. Boom! A blinding stream of scorching flame shot forward, crashing into the wall with a deafening roar. But as the flames dissipated, everyone stared in shock. The massive wall remained standing untouched, save for a faint, scorched mark. How's that possible? That was a direct hit from our burning cannon, and it didn't even leave a scratch, the Shandian warrior shouted in disbelief. This isn't just any ordinary wall. We've been cut off from both sides, one of the squad members said, panic rising in his voice. Wait, what's that? Another shouted. Mounted on the inner defense wall, a row of cannons slowly rotated and locked onto them. Damn it! They're trying to trap us in here and blast us into pieces. Idiots! Are we the kind to let them have their way? Who do they think we are? A single wall trying to stop us? Ridiculous! Cloud arrows, ready, a warrior from Skypiea barked. Yet. Deploy the cloud path. Equip the waver units. We're storming up there, another officer from the 2nd Division shouted. Let's go. Charge! In the blink of an eye, warriors readied their bows and fired cloud shell-tipped arrows toward the towering wall. Each arrow blossomed into a stretch of solid cloud, a makeshift ramp. One after another, division members mounted their waver-powered skates and boards, racing up the cloud roads toward the defense wall like a wave of storm-chasing spirits. Don't let them get up here. Open fire, blast them off, a Navy Vice Admiral stationed atop the defense wall bellowed. Boom boom boom. Artillery shells rained down like a violent storm, pummeling the attackers. Chaos erupted. Meanwhile, atop the central tower of Marine headquarters, Sengoku's brows were furrowed deeply as he monitored the unfolding chaos through binoculars. His face twitched with restrained tension. The weapons used by the Grey Kingdom were unlike anything the Navy had ever faced: arrows that summoned solid cloud paths, wavers that allowed for agile midair movement and even temporary flight, shock shells with devastating impact, massively destructive burning cannons, and those bizarre, modified guns powered by impact shells, each more formidable than the last. Sengoku had no idea that ever since Rosinante had arrived in Skypiea, he had made the enhancement of sky shell technology a top priority. Every island conquered thereafter was required to collect high-powered sky shells and send them to the research division. Rosinante even enlisted the top shell experts from Skypiea to study, refine, and breed them. Sadly, most powerful sky shells were extremely difficult to cultivate, and even with full efforts, production remained scarce. It was only because the 2nd Division was both wealthy and currently leading the main assault that Rosinante had allocated a massive cache of high-tier sky shell-based weapons to them: sniper rifles and submachine guns forged from impact shells. Though not as potent as reject shell-based weapons, they were still leagues ahead of standard Navy firearms. These weapons, they must be from Skypiea. I never imagined there were so many strange and powerful tools in that place. No wonder the world government chose to tolerate its existence back in the day, Sengoku muttered grimly. Back when the world government was still forming, weaponry had been even more primitive. Battles were waged by sheer force of arms, and engaging Skypieans with their miraculous shells at 10,000 meters above sea level had been nearly impossible. Sengoku could imagine the immense losses incurred, and why, in the end, they simply gave up. Whoa, are these things really made from shells? That's wild. Garp laughed heartily, finding the bizarre weapons amusing despite the tense situation. We can't let them push forward. Mobilize all batteries, fire at will. And someone get Sakazuki here immediately. Sengoku commanded. Akainu, meanwhile, had been stationed near the naval treasury to guard against infiltration, explaining his absence thus far. With Sengoku's orders relayed, the Marine headquarters erupted in cannon fire. The barrage was overwhelming. Thunder boomed in the air as shells screamed down on the 2nd Division. Charge! We need to break through quickly. Snipers! Take out their cannons! 2nd Division fighters surged forward with everything they had. But the bombardment was relentless. Many of the cloud roads were shattered midair, sending numerous waver riders plummeting from the sky. Though their snipers could eliminate cannon operators, the gunners manning the wall's interior defenses were well hidden: no clear line of sight, no chance to strike. Damn it, they're hammering us hard. Burning cannon squads, return fire. Blow those cannons to pieces, roared Railman, seething with fury. As a blast fruit user, he wasn't used to being the one under fire. Rows of fighters leveled their burning cannons at the gun ports atop the defense wall. Boom! Boom! Beams of searing heat roared forth and slammed into the defenses, but as the glow faded, the cannon ports remained untouched. What the hell? Even the cannons are made from special material. This isn't right. Why won't they break? Panic began to ripple through the 2nd Division. Their most powerful weapons were doing almost nothing. Just then, some of the cannon fire began to slow. Did I see that right? One fighter murmured, eyes darting around. The number of shells seems to be dropping. Yet, some of those gun ports aren't firing as fast either. Is it a malfunction? Or, are they running low on ammo? Malfunction maybe, it's hard to believe the Navy could run out of shells. What's going on with the fire rate? Kong bellowed from above. Marshal! The cannon crews report that they're out of ammunition, a flustered officer sprinted over with the news. Out! Why aren't they resupplying? Kong's face contorted in disbelief. Marshal Kong, the cannon crews did send men for more ammo, but several armories have suddenly come under heavy pirate attack. The transport lines are blocked. The armory officers say the enemy's firepower is too strong. They're requesting urgent reinforcements or they risk being overrun. What? When did this happen? What about the officers posted to guard the armories? What were they doing? Sengoku snapped. According to the reports, many of the supervising officers were sniped before the battle even began. Almost all of them were killed in an instant. Even the senior officers guarding the armories were picked off by enemy snipers. Their firepower is terrifying. Even lieutenant commander level officers are vulnerable. The remaining guards have retreated into the armories for safety, the officer explained grimly. Report. Armory A3 has fallen into pirate hands, another officer shouted as he sprinted in. What? That fast? What happened to the troops stationed there? Sengoku demanded. Sir, enemy numbers were overwhelming. Their leader displayed combat strength on par with a vice admiral. He stormed the armory directly. A3 couldn't hold and was overrun. Other armories are in grave danger as well, the officer reported. You, move out. Take back those armories now. We can't let them fall into enemy hands. Kong roared at the nearby vice admirals. Yes, sir. Without hesitation, the vice admirals launched into action, racing toward the armories under siege. A1 armory is down too? What about Kuzan? Didn't he go to support that front? Sengoku suddenly looked up, a thought striking him. A1 armory just reported back Vice Admiral Kuzan never arrived. Right now, Vice Admiral Doberman is leading the Marines to hold off Jack of the Grey Dominion. But Jack is extremely difficult to deal with, the situation is dangerously unstable, the officer reported. Find out immediately what's going on with Kuzan. Sengoku ordered. Yes, sir. The officer saluted and ran off. 2nd Division. Charge. They've run out of shells. Take the fight straight to Marineford's main tower. A voice rang out from the battlefield. It was Railman's. Railman had known all along that the other divisions attacking the marine armories were merely creating an opening one he was now using for the main assault. And it was working. Outrageous. Are you all really going to let them run wild like this? Or do you need an old man like me to handle things? Kong growled, his face darkening. Boss Kong, there's no need for you to step in just yet. I'll take care of him, said a grizzled old vice admiral as he stepped forward. He took a few strides forward, then kicked off the ground, his body launching high above Marineford. As he rose, wings burst forth from his back. With a powerful flap, he shot toward Railman like a deadly arrow. In the age of Roger, the most famous pirates were Gold Roger, Whitebeard, Golden Lion, and the Red Count. These four were legends. After Roger's death and the capture of the Golden Lion and Red Count, Big Mom and Kaido rose to prominence and became the top contenders. Of course, another one, red-haired Shanks, would eventually make a name for himself, though he hadn't reached his peak yet. But the seas were never ruled by just a few. In the New World, many other pirates rivaled Big Mom and Kaido. Otherwise, the throne of Pirate King would have long been decided. These were pirates who had survived since Roger's era. While not quite at the level of Roger or the Four Emperors, they weren't any weaker than the Marines' top-tier vice admirals. In response, the navy of Kong, Garp, and Sengoku's era also had its monsters vice admirals with power to match. Like the man charging at Railman now, known as the Hawk Vice Admiral, he was a Zoan-type devil fruit user with the power of the Hawk fruit. His physical skills were monstrous, he could fly, and most importantly he was an awakened Zoan user. Railman, just as he was leading the 2nd Division's charge, suddenly sensed a swift attack coming from above. The speed was intense. During his 2 years on Skypiea, Railman hadn't improved drastically in raw strength, he was past his prime. But one thing had grown tremendously, his observation haki. The mindnet techniques developed by Katakuri had been widely spread by Rosinante throughout the Grey Dominion. Those who performed great service could earn access to Mindnet 1.0, with higher merit unlocking higher versions. The Bloodsworn Guard trained in Mindnet 5.0, while Realman and the various vice captains could train in 7.0. Bins was personally granted Mindnet 8.0. Only Rosinante and Katakuri had access to Mindnet 9.0. After mastering Mindnet 7.0, Railman's observation haki had reached a new level. The moment the Hawk Vice Admiral approached, Railman sensed it instantly. He turned and launched a punch just as the Admiral's kick flew in. Not bad. You actually caught my kick, the Hawk Vice Admiral sneered, about to boast when a massive explosion detonated beneath him, blasting him backward through the air. Some people just don't learn. Especially when fighting a walking bomb like me. You really asked for this, Railman said coldly. Well, look who it is, Railman the detonator. Didn't expect you to bow down to a greenhorn like Rosinante. The Hawk Vice Admiral narrowed his eyes coldly. Despite being blasted, he had quickly protected himself using armament haki. He took some damage, but as an awakened Zoan, his injuries regenerated almost instantly. This is how the Navy fights now? You knew the Grey Dominion was coming, yet you didn't even bother to study us. Railman said flatly. The Hawk Vice Admiral's face twitched in embarrassment. To be honest, he had never taken Rosinante seriously. Sure, he'd heard that Rosinante could hold his own against both Sakazuki and Kyuzen, but in his eyes, a teenager couldn't possibly pose a real threat. Naturally, he hadn't bothered to look at the files on the Grey Kingdom's key figures. Embarrassing, muttered Kane with a smirk. Though there was some distance between Real Man's battle and Kane's group, everyone here was a master of observation haki. They could clearly hear Real Man's words. The Hawk Vice Admiral's arrogant nature had always clashed with the bold, brash Kane. So seeing him humiliated now, Kane and even Garp chuckled with satisfaction. Kong, however, shot Garp a withering glare. Even he was displeased with the Hawk's performance. I don't memorize dead men's files. If you dare attack Marineford, you're already corpses, the Hawk Vice Admiral said coldly, brushing off the awkwardness. Hawk Feather Barrage, he shouted. With a beat of his wings, sharp feathers infused with armament haki shot out like a hail of black arrows toward Railman. The Hawk knew Railman was a bomb fruit user. His entire body was explosive. So he wisely chose ranged suppression. The black feathers flew fast and hard, each one infused with haki, capable of piercing solid stone with ease. But with his enhanced observation haki, Railman dodged effortlessly. Then, with a flick of his foot, an explosion erupted beneath him, propelling him at insane speed toward the Hawk Vice Admiral. In an instant, he was right in front of him, fist raised to strike. Thanks to his control over explosions, enhanced by MindNet 7.0, Realman's blast step had become even faster and more precise. So fast. That technique didn't used to be this quick. Looks like your strength's improved, the Hawk Vice Admiral muttered, a hint of surprise in his voice. He didn't panic though. He was confident in his flight. If he kept to the skies, Railman couldn't reach him. The detonator's attacks were useless if they couldn't connect. In theory, his powers directly countered Railman's. Trinity Blast Fist. Railman growled. The sleeve on his arm tore open as he drove his fist forward. Not good. The Hawk Vice Admiral's face fell as he realized the punch was too fast. His observation haki only caught a blur. His body couldn't react in time. Railman's fist struck true. Boom. A brutal series of detonations erupted across the Hawk Vice Admiral's body, explosions chaining together in a relentless inferno. He had no chance to fight back. The explosions on the Hawk's body continued for quite a while before finally subsiding. When the dust cleared and everyone looked again, they saw the once arrogant Vice Admiral Hawk with his eyes rolled back and froth foaming at his mouth, completely unconscious. If not for the fact that he was a Zoan-type Devil Fruit Awakener, he probably would have been dead on the spot. There's a type of wind dial from Skypiea. When you attach it to your elbow, you can use its propulsion to speed up your punches. The only downside is, said Railman as he raised his arm, revealing the torn fabric around his elbow, it ruins your clothes. Honestly, I've lost count of how many sleeves I've gone through like this. That idiot Hawk. Sengoku growled furiously. Hawk had all the advantages against Railman. With his ability to fly, he could have completely suppressed him from the air. Even if Railman enhanced himself using the wind dial to increase his combat power, as long as Hawk didn't let his guard down, his aerial superiority would have been enough to defeat him. Hawk got careless. But Railman's strength is clearly far beyond what we understood. We can't underestimate him again, Sengoku said solemnly. We can't let their momentum keep building. Allow me to take him down. Leave it to me instead, Garp said from the side. If an admiral makes a move just to defeat him, it'll only make them look more impressive. Let me finish what I started last time. You and Kane both stay put. Steelbone Kong snapped. Rosinante and Katakuri haven't even appeared yet. If you two go all out now, and those two show up later, are you expecting an old man like me to clean up the mess? The Marines haven't fallen that low yet. Vice Admirals Enigmo and Doberman. Railman is yours. Show me what the next generation of Vice Admirals is made of. Yes, sir. Enigmo and Doberman responded as they stepped forward. With a flash, both leapt from the command tower, then used moonwalk to descend upon Railman like twin predators. Two of you against one. Enigmo said with a smirk. Looks like the Fleet Admiral doesn't trust us that much. As he spoke, his hair began to stir without wind, transforming into 6 spider-like appendages. Each one gripped a sword, and combined with his own 2 hands, he now wielded 8 blades in total. Well, that's a little intimidating, Doberman added, drawing his long sword with a ferocious grin. Let's show them that the new blood of the Marines is ready for war. Oh no, 2 Vice Admirals. So scary, so scary. Railman mocked. Then he raised his hand, and suddenly, 2 to 3 dozen elite soldiers of the 2nd Division surrounded Enigmo and Doberman, each one armed to the teeth. How could we possibly let you attack our captain that easily? If you want to go after our captain, you'll have to get through us first. I always heard Vice Admirals were scary, but that last one wasn't so tough. All he had was a pair of wings. Hell, I've seen pigeons scarier than him. If you guys are anything like him, our captain won't even need to lift a finger. The 2nd Division elites, weapons at the ready, stared down Anigamo and Doberman with unwavering resolve. Mere ants! Anigamo snarled. He slashed all 8 blades in a deadly flurry. In an instant, a dozen 2nd Division elites were sent flying, torn through by the storm of blades and crashing hard to the ground. Foolish creatures who don't know their place, Doberman sneered. His face, scarred beyond recognition, was twisted into a monstrous expression. His blade moved just as viciously, sending several more soldiers hurtling back with brutal slashes. Humph, all bark, no bite, Anigamo muttered. Let's see if you, the captain of this rabble, are any better. Railman watched calmly. You ever heard of something called the Healing Seal in the Grey Nation? Anigamo and Doberman paused, their brows furrowing. Every one of those soldiers you just cut down is a merit-bearer of our 2nd Division. You know what a Healing Seal does? Even as he spoke, the very soldiers who'd just been slashed were slowly standing back up, completely healed. The only evidence they'd even been injured at all were the tears and bloodstains on their clothing. The wounds themselves had vanished. One warrior, whose uniform was far too tattered, simply tore the rest off, revealing a strange, intricate mark carved into his skin. Healing Seal! Anigamo and Doberman both blurted in surprise. They'd read about it in the intelligence files. That's right. Healing Seal, one of the soldiers said proudly. Only those who've earned real merit get this. It's engraved personally by the captain. With it, we've gained near-immortal regenerative power. Near-immortal? Doberman scoffed coldly. It's just a tool Rosinante uses to control you. How sad, Anigamo added. To have your lives controlled by someone else without even realizing it. So what if our lives are in his hands? One soldier retorted. In this world, the lives of the weak have always belonged to the strong. That's how it's always been. But if you think our captain needs this seal to take our lives, then you've gravely misunderstood. This isn't a chain. It's a medal, a symbol of loyalty and honor. When they'd first been offered the Healing Seal, Rosinante had laid everything out plainly, the benefits, the risks, and the consequences. Whether or not to accept the seal had been entirely their choice. But the truth? Even if Rosinante said it was voluntary, others would view rejection as disloyalty. At first, many accepted it due to peer pressure or battlefield necessity. But over time, after the seal saved their lives again and again, it became more than a tool, it became a badge of pride. Without the Healing Seal, many of them would already be dead. And they knew full well, with the power that Rosinante, Railman, and the blood-sworn guard possessed, they could have wiped them out at any time, seal or not. The fact that they hadn't was more proof of trust than control. Nearly immortal, huh? Let's see if you're still alive after I slice you into pieces. Anigamo sneered coldly as he heard the words of the 2nd Division members, swinging his military blades and charging straight at them. Cheap tricks. You ants think you can defeat us just by relying on some strange ability? What a joke. Doberman also moved in, his expression icy as he slashed at the elite warriors of the 2nd Division. Kill them. Let's show them the might of our 2nd Division. Flash gun. Impact dial. Flame lance. Take this burning cannon. The 2nd Division members unleashed a barrage of attacks using their Sky Island dials, frenziedly counter-attacking Ghost Spider and Doberman. But the reality was cruel. Ghost Spider and Doberman were both elites among Navy headquarters vice admirals. Even with all their dial-enhanced gear, the 2nd Division fighters were outmatched and repeatedly sent flying by the vice admiral's strikes. Still, none of them gave up. With the help of the mind net, they avoided fatal blows and threw themselves back into battle, fearless of death. What terrifying resilience! Even Sengoku, standing high above, couldn't help but be moved. He had read reports about this strange regenerative ability called the Healing Seal mark, but seeing it firsthand was something else entirely. The recovery rate was simply monstrous. Perhaps not even awakened Zoan users could rival it. With just over a dozen elite soldiers bearing these marks, it was as if they had summoned a small group of Zoan ability users on the battlefield. If Rosinante wanted, he could form an army that was practically unkillable. Even Steel Bone Kong's face turned grim. They're all excellent warriors. That bastard Rosinante actually pulled them into the world of piracy. Garp growled furiously at the side. Just then, a naval officer ran over in a panic. Report to the Admiral. We've found news of Vice Admiral Kuzan. He was ambushed on his way to reinforce Armory A1, caught in some kind of unknown suppression. He's unable to support A1 now. Everyone froze. Sengoku's eyes widened in disbelief, and even Kong and the others wore shocked expressions. What? They managed to stall Kuzan? Could it be? Is the enemy also someone with Admiral-level strength? Was it Rosinante? Or maybe Katakuri? Sengoku asked seriously. Everyone present knew, Kuzan was already at Admiral-level strength. His promotion papers were already submitted, just awaiting approval. If someone in the Grey Kingdom could stall him, then that enemy was clearly also an Admiral-class threat. Only Rosinante, or maybe Katakuri, could pull that off. No, we didn't see who it was, the officer replied nervously. The attacker uses a space-based ability. The bullets came from seemingly nowhere right out of thin air, almost point-blank against Vice Admiral Kuzan. Their rifles are more powerful than ours, with an insane rate of fire. A single bullet can blow a man apart, and they were spraying rapidly. Occasionally, laser swords even shoot out of wormholes and stab into the Vice Admiral to stop his movements. The officer's face was pale, still stunned by what he had witnessed. Acting on Sengoku's orders, the officer had taken a search party to track down Kuzan along the path to Armory A1. The base wasn't large, but following the route, they eventually found him. When they arrived, Kuzan was standing alert, scanning the empty surroundings. Other than Kuzan and a few lifeless Navy corpses on the ground, there was no one else in sight. Just as the officer was about to approach, Kuzan shouted, "Watch out for enemy snipers! Don't come any closer!" Startled, the officer stopped in place and focused his senses on the area. But there was no enemy in sight for a long stretch in every direction. Still, he knew Kuzan wouldn't give a false alarm. Just as confusion crept in, out of the corner of his eye, the officer saw a sharp bullet materializing right next to Kuzan's head, fired from empty air. Before anyone could react, it pierced through Kuzan's skull cleanly. Then dozens more bullets followed, tearing Kuzan's head into a bloody mist. "The Vice Admiral Kuzan's head, it's been blown apart," one of the accompanying soldiers cried out in shock. This was one of the Navy's monster Vice Admirals, a man with Admiral-level power reduced to a shattered corpse right before their eyes. But just as disbelief settled in, a chill began to spread in the air. Ice mist gathered rapidly. Kuzan's shattered head began to reform piece by piece until it was whole again. "Tell the Admiral I won't be able to reinforce A1, Kuzan muttered lazily. "What a pain. I'll probably get chewed out for this later." "He's healed again," the soldiers gasped. "Don't be so surprised. Vice Admiral Kuzan is a Logia user. Normal attacks can't hurt him," the officer snapped to his men. "True, but whoever's attacking me isn't trying to kill me, they're trying to keep me pinned here. The bullets don't have haki. If they did, even I would be in trouble. But it looks like I'm going to be stuck dealing with this for a while," Kuzan explained. "Vice Admiral, please tell us, who's behind the attack?" the officer asked again. "Tell the Admiral and the fleet commander, to beware the blood-bound guard of the Grey Nation," Kuzan said grimly. But just as the words left his mouth, two searing laser swords burst from wormholes shooting upward from the ground, piercing through Kuzan's shoulders and nailing him in place. Still, the chill of his ice powers spread rapidly, freezing the laser blades in moments. As the frost tried to creep into the wormhole's opening, it closed just in time to avoid being frozen. "This whole fruit, it's even more troublesome than I imagined," Kuzan muttered, narrowing his eyes. 20 minutes earlier. After receiving the order from Sengoku, Kuzan immediately led a squad of marine soldiers and rushed toward the A1 armory with urgency. Meanwhile, inside the Pika Temple, at the Blood-Sworn Guard's Dimensional Strike Command Center. "All units prepare. Kuzan is about to enter the wormhole trap zone. Initiate Dimensional Strike. All sniper teams, get ready to engage. Prepare to snipe Kuzan. Repeat, prepare to snipe Kuzan." Bins commanded sharply. "Dimensional Strike, commence." Bins ordered. As Kuzan was sprinting forward, several bullets suddenly tore out from the air right beside his forehead, throat, legs, and abdomen seemingly from nowhere. In an instant, they pierced straight through his body, shocking even him. At the same time, bullets continued to fire one after another. The Marines following Kuzan to support the A1 armory were struck violently, blood bursting from their heads as they collapsed to the ground. These bullets emerged with zero warning, literally brushing past their targets at point-blank range. The time between the bullet's appearance and impact was almost non-existent. Even Kuzan couldn't dodge fast enough, let alone the regular Marine soldiers. One Marine lieutenant panicked as he saw Kuzan hit, and shouted, "Sniper fire! Everyone stay alert for snipers!" But from such terrifyingly close distances, and with those shock-shell sniper rifles producing an overwhelming force in such compact barrels, what good was alertness going to do? The moment he finished speaking, a bullet materialized out of thin air and pierced cleanly through his temple. Blood sprayed in a fine mist as he collapsed without a word. Before the battle began, Bins had already placed numerous spatial markers around Marineford's core infrastructure. Especially along this road leading to the A1 armory, they had anticipated the Marines would send reinforcements, so Bins had prepared an elaborate dimensional web here. This trap, which he called the dimensional net, was one of Bins' deadliest creations. He had layered wormhole coordinates like spiderwebs all throughout this zone, allowing the Blood-Sworn Guard to open tiny portals at will to strike from any angle, perfect for coordinated ambushes. The moment someone entered this zone, it was like a fly falling into a spider's web. A death sentence. "Oh my, that's really dangerous," Kuzan muttered, unfazed by the multiple wounds riddling his body. "To think you can open wormholes practically touching my skin. If I hadn't reacted fast enough, I'd have ended up just like them." His voice remained calm, but his expression was icy cold. Watching marine after marine fall right before his eyes to invisible attacks with no sign of the assailant was infuriating even for him. Bin's the piercing knight, you're watching, aren't you? Kuzan called out. Can't you let us through? I'm under direct orders from the fleet admiral. If I don't go, I'll get chewed out later. I'm afraid not, Bin's voice echoed from all around. We too act on orders from His Majesty. No one is to reach the A1 armory. So I'm terribly sorry, but I must refuse. The voice kept shifting direction, giving Kuzan no way to pinpoint its source. Yeah, I figured it wouldn't be that easy. Ice time. Kuzan's body instantly transformed into a man of ice. But just as he activated his power, two figures wielding laser swords burst out of wormholes right in front of him. Their blades crossed in a flash like a massive pair of scissors and sliced Kuzan clean in half. But in the very instant they cut through him, both attackers were frozen solid by the icy aura he emitted. Their bodies were encased in frost almost instantly. Kuzan's words had just been a feint to lure them into attacking. And it worked. Thankfully, just as the two nearly turned into frozen statues, wormholes opened beneath their feet and pulled them away at the last moment. How are you two holding up? Binz asked anxiously as Ryan and Winter returned through the wormholes. I thought I was dead for sure, Ryan gasped. If you hadn't set up so many wormholes ahead of time, we'd have been corpses back there. His Majesty was right after all, Binz muttered. Kuzan's strength really is admiral level. We're switching to Plan 2. Yes, sir, all present responded in unison. Plan 2. A strategy designed specifically for dealing with enemies of monstrous power. After the disaster with Kaido, Binz and the others had learned wormholes or not, some beings were simply too terrifying. One slight misstep could spell annihilation for the entire Bloodsworn Guard. But their mission didn't always allow them to avoid such monsters. And so, Plan 2 was born. Unlike the aggressive Plan 1, Plan 2 emphasized extreme caution. All attacks were made within the safety of wormholes. Microportals were used to deliver pinpoint assault sniper rounds, laser stabs, combustion blasts. Anything to limit the target's movement. This web of overlapping wormholes, the dimensional web, was Bin's masterpiece. They weren't aiming to kill the enemy. They knew that was near impossible. Their only goal, immobilization. If they could pin down a monster like Kuzan, even temporarily, the mission was a success. Tiny wormholes opened and closed rapidly around the battlefield, each time unleashing a hail of bullets in an attempt to suppress Kuzan's movements. The bullets weren't imbued with haki. Bin's forces weren't powerful enough for that. Even those who had armament haki couldn't scratch someone like Kuzan. Better to overwhelm him with sheer volume. And as the relentless barrage continued, laser beams and explosive shells joined in, targeting Kuzan and his squad. As a Logia user, Kuzan could weather the storm, even if it was annoying. But the marines around him had no such luck. Despite his efforts to shield them, they were picked off one by one. This is a problem. Kuzan muttered, clearly annoyed. He realized now that Binz wasn't trying to defeat him only to trap him in place, robbing him of the chance to aid A1. And for the moment, he really had no idea how to break through. Upon hearing the officer's report, Sengoku's expression darkened like a thundercloud. He hadn't expected even Kuzan to be held back. That meant support to the other armories was likely impossible. The Navy might soon find itself in a terrifying predicament out of ammunition. At that same moment, the tide of battle shifted outside the Marine headquarters main gate. Under the fierce assault of Vice Admirals Inigamo and Doberman, the elite warriors of Rosinante's 2nd Division were repeatedly knocked flying. Though their injuries rapidly healed thanks to the regenerative sealing marks, they were still being forced back under the sheer might of their opponents. Even with the powerful recovery ability of the healing seals, the difference in strength between them and the Vice Admirals was overwhelming. Just when they could no longer hold the line, Inigamo and Doberman suddenly halted their attacks. Both their expressions turned to shocked disbelief in their eyes. They couldn't move. Why? Seeing the Vice Admirals suddenly freeze, the battered 2nd Division fighters let out sighs of relief. We finally did it. I thought we were going to die here. Damn it, being cut up by them hurt like hell, the 2nd Division warriors said with ragged but exhilarated voices. What's happening? Why can't we move? It feels like something's binding us. Strings. So many thin, nearly invisible, but unbelievably strong threads. When did they wrap around us? The stunned voices of Inigamo and Doberman revealed their disbelief. At the start, they had looked down on these so-called elite warriors. They hadn't even bothered using observation haki, thinking raw force would be enough to slash them down and then go after their real target Railman. But they'd unknowingly walked right into the 2nd Division's trap. Now, as they activated their haki, they could sense it clearly. Countless fine, transparent threads had silently bound them at some point during the battle. It actually worked. Railman blinked in surprise as he saw the Vice Admirals immobilized. Even he hadn't expected the plan to succeed so easily. After all, they were dealing with two vice admirals of Marine headquarters, some of the most formidable fighters in the entire Navy. Originally, his plan had just been to buy time so his team could escape the encirclement. But now, even he couldn't believe they'd managed to snare two titans with such ease. Looks like Marine vice admirals aren't all that after all. How do you like the special Sky Island gift we brought just for you, the cloud rope trap? These clouds are ultra-fine, soft, and incredibly tough. Once they've got you, don't even dream of breaking free, 1st Division elite said smugly. Caught in our trap? Just sit still and wait to be cut down, shouted another warrior, aiming his knight's rifle at Enigmo and Doberman. You bastards made us bleed. Now it's our turn, a soldier armed with an impact dial roared, his face twisted with rage. Don't get cocky. They're still vice admirals. Finish them off now. Railman barked, his voice cutting through the momentary high spirits. He knew this kind of trap wouldn't hold Enigmo and Doberman for long. If they didn't finish them quickly, it would be a missed opportunity. Not far away, high-ranking officers on the Navy's side noticed the scene as well. Damn it! After this is over, I'm dragging those two back to the training camp so Zephyr can beat them senseless, gritted Kong, face livid. With a roar, he ripped off his coat, clearly intending to end this personally. Fleet Admiral, let me handle this. Sengoku immediately stepped up. Let us do it, Fleet Admiral, several vice admirals volunteered at once. If Kong had to intervene against some random pirates, even if they won, the Navy's reputation would take a massive blow. If they needed the Fleet Admiral to deal with every pirate, then what was the point of having admirals and vice admirals? Damn it! Don't underestimate Marine vice admirals. Suddenly, a cold shout erupted from the battlefield. Rokushiki secret technique life return. With a sharp snap, Enigmo shattered the cloud ropes binding him. His 8 blades danced like death incarnate, slashing through the 2nd Division elites. Several were flung back, and some were cut clean in half, killed instantly. Break! At the same time, Doberman roared and burst free from the trap as well. His longsword swept in wide arcs, massive sword waves slicing down multiple elite soldiers at the waist. Damn you! Realman's eyes turned bloodshot as he watched over a dozen elite soldiers die in the blink of an eye. These men were the cream of the 2nd Division, each one had undergone years of training. His heart ached as they fell. With a thunderous burst of Soru beneath his feet, Railman lunged at Enigmo, his fist blazing with dial energy. Boom! His punch collided with Enigmo's crossed blades, releasing a fierce explosion that shook the air. Enigmo was knocked back several paces by the impact. You all stand down. I'll handle this myself. Railman ordered the remaining fighters. Understood. They backed away at once. They knew this fight had escalated beyond their level. Railman! Enigmo growled, his eyes burning with cold fury as he charged forward again. Doberman wasn't far behind. In an instant, the three clashed with steel and fury once more. From afar, seeing the two vice admirals escape the trap and engage Railman in battle gaining the upper hand, Kong finally relaxed a little. He no longer felt the need to step in personally. But just as that relief settled in, the cannon fire around them suddenly ceased, and the sound of melee combat from below grew louder and louder. Kong's expression turned grim again. What happened to the artillery? Why did it stop firing? He demanded. Fleet Admiral. The cannons have run out of ammunition, a senior officer reported, breathless. What? Didn't we send reinforcements to the armories? What's going on? Kong roared. Fleet Admiral. The pirates attacking the armories are powerful and numerous. Our officers are locked in intense combat, the officer replied, face pale. Are you telling me that we, the mighty Navy, might run out of firepower inside our own headquarters? Kong thundered in disbelief. I'll go.